Today, we're talking about how to build the perfect resume and cover letter.
I'm Jen.
And I'm Gina.
Welcome to Job Search Stories.
I think we should take a question from a viewer.
This question is from Joe. I'm not getting jobs and I'm thinking about investing in someone or something to help me with my resume. What's worse or better? Having a person create a resume or cover letter for me, or AI building a resume or cover letter for me?
I've definitely had a career coach help me out with my resume and cover letter before, and I've very much benefited from it. But I think at the same time, not everybody's in that situation where they could pay somebody to do that. So there are resume builders and like resources like AI that can like help you out. But I think you and I talk about this a lot. You have to be smart with AI. Just make sure that you're like still putting the human touch on it.
As a career coach, it's not in my best interest to say don't pay for a career coach, but my personal opinion is that for the average job seeker, you can get by without paying for additional services.
Yeah.
There are so many resources, even AI can really be used to help facilitate your job search process. So I would never actively encourage someone to pay for a service. I think there's a lot that you can do just with widely available resources.
I know a lot of people who have felt like they need to like pay somebody, spend money in order to like get a job, especially when they're like down bad.
Well, and it's psychological too,
Yeah.
right? Because people look at free resources and they're like, it can't be good if
They're
it's
bad.
free.
Yeah.
But, if I got to pay for it, well, then it must be good.
Yeah.
That ain't always the truth, y'all.
Don't get scammed, people.
Don't get scammed.
So let's talk about AI when it comes to resumes and cover letters. What are the pros and cons?
I personally love using ChatGPT.
I know you do.
When it's used correctly, because I do think there's a right way and a wrong way to use it. But again, it's like, as we talk about free resources, absolutely a great resource for you to utilize in your job search.
I think in general, I'm also a strong believer in like using resources to make your life easier, but still being smart about it and making sure that the human touch is still there, because you and I, as managers, we can tell when AI is being used and not being used like correctly. So
absolutely. You can always spot when somebody's used ChatGPT and they haven't changed anything. They just straight up copy pasted that output.
Yeah.
Don't be that person.
Do you think that like recruiters notice when people are using AI?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you notice when people are using AI, right?
That's true.
You can always tell. And the dead giveaways are usually when it's super generic. If it's missing like quantitative information, that would show that you haven't tailored any of the information. Also, you can really tell by the tone and certain words that it uses. One of the words that's been flagged is delve. They're like, people don't use that word. So there are specific words that are kind of like, oh, I know that word.
Yeah.
That's an AI word.
Yeah, well, what if you're just like me and you love the word delve?
I've never heard you use it.
Okay, maybe I don't use it speaking, but maybe
you write
I use it writing. Yeah. The way I write is very different than the way I talk. Do recruiters care that applicants are using AI for their resumes or their cover letters?
As long as you're taking the time to tailor the output, not just kind of copying and pasting what's there, because you want to still make it specific to you. When you look at role titles, you could be a project manager at company A and a project manager at company B, and those roles might look completely different. So if you're asking ChatGPT to give you responsibilities of a project manager or to write bullet points for, work experience as a project manager, you still have to check, one, that information is accurate, but two, that it's really specific to you and the work that you did. So this is where you kind of have to be a bit of a prompt engineer, and you have to put kind of as much information as you can so that it can craft a bullet point that is specific to you.
Are there any other tools like outside of AI or Canva or whatever that you would recommend to like build your resume?
I think a great free one is actually Indeed's Resume Builder. We've got some great free templates that you can use. And even if you're a person who doesn't even want to use a template, if you go to Indeed's career guide, you're going to see that we have a section just for resume templates, just for cover letter templates, and with actual examples for specific roles. So So if you're an administrative assistant and you don't know where to begin or what type of information you should include, you can go to the career guide and see an example of an administrative assistant's resume, and that can give you inspiration to create your own.
For me, before I worked at Indeed, I used the Indeed career guide so often. I feel like there's just so many resources on Indeed in order to just plop your relevant information in. But, if you still want to use AI, to each their own.
You can even just use Indeed's resume builder or Indeed's profile.
Yeah.
Put the information in, it tells you exactly where it needs to go, and it'll format it for you.
And I mean, at least with like the Indeed profile and the Indeed resume, you can just like send off your resume. It can become searchable to employers, things like that. Another thing that I've been seeing on social media has been hacks for the ATS. I've heard that this is a pretty good hack to beat the ATS, but I want to know from you. So you would add an area of expertise and a technical proficiency section to your resume, and then add keywords from the job description.
It's kind of just good resume building advice.
Yeah.
So whether or not you would consider it a hack, I really don't like that term. It is good to have clearly defined sections on a resume. And you've got to think about how an ATS actually parses. So when it's looking for information, it's looking for those section headers. So areas of expertise is a good and common one to use. Technical proficiencies, sometimes you can just put skills. Just put a section header that the applicant tracking system has probably been trained to search for. You don't have to go crazy. Just keep it simple.
And then also the job listing thing. You should be putting things from the job description on your resume so that the ATS can pick up that you're matching what's in the job description.
Absolutely. Those skills, whether they're preferred or required, we typically refer to those as ATS keywords. And so for each individual job description, there are keywords that the ATS is scanning for to basically indicate whether or not the resume is qualified per se to do the job.
Hack number 2, putting the job description keywords in the header or footer and whiting it out so it's like not visible.
I've also seen it as being listed as putting the whole job description in white in the header or footer. Doesn't work. And the reason I'll tell you is because you've got to understand how an applicant tracking system works and how it parses. So when it's parsing information, all the text on your resume is being parsed. That text is all showing up the same color. So you're not really tricking it. When a recruiter is looking at it, they're going to see all of the information. They're going to see what you just copied and pasted. The other reason why you wouldn't want to put that in the header and footer is because a lot of applicant tracking systems don't parse those pieces.
Yeah.
It's not even going to be helpful.
You said a lot of applicant tracking systems, not all. So this could be a hack.
The one chance that you get the applicant tracking system that does parse it.
Yeah.
Sure. But again, you might make it past the applicant tracking system in that sense to where maybe you consider it a hack, but it's not going to take you much further than that because the recruiter is going to look at it and they'll be able to see what your experience really is.
Last one, submitting your resume as a document instead of a PDF.
I believe I understand where it comes from. It's this idea that it wouldn't be able to necessarily parse the text as a PDF versus a Word doc, when really applicant tracking systems can parse both documents. The important thing is to actually just submit the format that the employer is requesting. Because if they specifically say, submit a Word doc and you submit a PDF, it might not be parsed correctly because maybe their applicant tracking system can't parse the PDF. Basically, submit what they ask. So if they're specific, be sure to submit the file format that they requested.
Do you have some hacks on how people can beat that ATS and actually get their application to the next round?
Really, ultimately, you just want to make it as easy as possible for the ATS to actually parse the information on your resume. It needs to be able to scan it and read it. So we talk about things like a single column resume, about having those clearly defined sections and headers, not putting confusing information on there that it wouldn't be able to parse. So no information in headers and footers. You don't want photos. You don't want logos. You don't want columns or text boxes. You just want to kind of keep it as plain and easy to read as possible. And of course, those ATS keywords, like you mentioned, going back to the job description and looking at those skills, those core competencies, those preferred or required education or experience, all that information is going to be listed in the ATS. So you want to make sure that if you have that experience or those skills, that you're including it on your resume so that, again, the ATS can see it and realize that you are qualified.
At the end of the day, we always get questions about the ATS. So this is going to be really, really useful to like people watching because sometimes the ATS can be really confusing. You've taught me so much. I feel like an ATS expert.
You are at this point.
I am. I want to talk about my least favorite thing. You're not ever going to change my mind. I don't care that we've done 3 seasons. Let's talk about cover letters. Let's talk about this post on X, formerly known as Twitter.
It will always be Twitter to me.
Okay, that's fine. You don't have any social media, so I think it's irrelevant.
I live in the past.
What feels close to begging but isn't? And this person says a cover letter.
My favorite description of it is fan fiction for working at a company. I find that to be the most accurate description.
Why do you feel like people hate cover letters so much?
Because they take so long to write. We give the advice that you really need to tailor your application materials for the role. And so if you're applying and you're in an active job search, you are already spending a lot of time tailoring that resume. Adding a cover letter into the mix too, it's one of those things where it's just like, I'm really trying not to burn out. Do I really have to write another thing? I fully understand why people don't like them.
Why do you think that hiring managers ask for them, and how often do you think that they actually read them?
So typically they're asked for them because they want to get to know more about the applicant. I know that I found myself in a situation as a hiring manager where you're kind of faced evaluating, let's say 2 applicants, but only one of them can get an interview. And of those 2 applicants, on the resume, they might have very similar experience, very similar education. So it really does give the recruiter more insight to you as an individual, as opposed to just the resume.
Are they actually reading these cover letters? Both recruiters and hiring managers.
I personally read them in those instances where I'm trying to evaluate and kind of make a decision based on who should I interview. Recruiters seem to really like them.
Do you recommend that people still do it if it's listed as optional?
There's a few reasons in which you would want to include a cover letter, even if it says it's optional. One is just thinking about your personal career journey. If you are a career switcher, or if you have a gap in your resume, or even if you're applying for a job where writing skills are incredibly important, that would be a time in which you would want to include it because it gives you that opportunity to explain, here's why I have a gap, here's why I took a break, or here's an opportunity to show off my writing skills. So it's really kind of working in your benefit in that way. It can also show your intent and your excitement for a role. It could indicate to the recruiter, hey, this person's going above and beyond.
Basically what I'm hearing is, write those cover letters.
I know you don't like to do it, but it really can work in your favor.
Don't do it. But don't listen to me because I'm not the expert. That's all we have for today. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Job Search Stories. If you have any more advice you want from us, please make sure to leave a comment down below and like this video and subscribe to the channel. Bye.
Bye.
Or you just want to blah, 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 blah.
No, that was basically it. That's all I wanted to say.
I'm done.
That's all I wanted to say.
Like, that's the only advice I have. You're so smart. That's all I have to say.
Goodness.